Lando Norris wins the Austrian Grand Prix. Is it over for Max Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship? And has Ferrari made a step with their car for the rest of the season? These are my three takeaways from the Austrian Grand Prix. Let's start with Lando Norris. A huge victory for Lando on Sunday in Austria, coming off what was a disastrous Canadian Grand Prix by running into the back of championship leader and his teammate Oscar Piastri in that race, and coming into Austria and knowing that he needed to have a very strong result here due to the amount of points that he lost to his teammate because of the incident at the Canadian Grand Prix. Lando Norris had said at the end of this one that he'd been working really hard off track, but when he was pressed about what exactly has he been doing, a few things emerged that I found really interesting. One of them being putting in more hours at the factory with the team and the engineers. And you can sort of hear a bit of that over team radio with how himself and his race engineer Will Joseph now communicate with each other within the races as well. And those are just tiny little details that sort of end up becoming bigger things when it gets into qualifying and also the race itself. The other part of this is putting in more hours in the simulator. Lando Norris has really been struggling with the feel of this car, in particular for this season, especially at the beginning of the season, up until, I would say, Canada, where they introduced a new front suspension. And essentially, what he's been struggling with is what the team calls cueing. So the driver having an understanding for what the front end of the race car is going to do when they get onto the brakes and try and get the car into the corner itself and not being predictable. The drivers like it when they can predict the cars because that allows them to push the limit of the machine to sort of find out where the limits are within each particular track and each particular corner. So this new front suspension that was introduced in Canada carried over into Austria as well. And then McLaren adding on top of all of that with pretty much a whole new front end. So front new suspension, new front wing, new brake ducts, and other things as well. So this is a massive update that McLaren has brought to the MCL 39. It's probably the biggest one that they'll introduce throughout the rest of this season, but it really does look like it's paid off for them. Hearing from Lando Norris on Saturday, he had said that the updates were giving him a better feel for the race car, and then Andrea Stella confirmed this as well. I heard from him on Saturday following qualifying, and he had said that the new updates had provided the drivers with a better balance of the car and also more grip as well. And I think with Lando working on those other things off the track, plus working on himself personally as well, him saying that this is the most amount of work he's sort of ever had to do on any of these things while being away from a racetrack to meet his teammate in Oscar Piastri and where Oscar is performing at. I think all of these things really just played through. All the hard work came through, and you could see it delivered throughout the race weekend in Austria because Lando was very dominant in pretty much all the sessions that had taken place aside from free practice 1. But this is a good sign for Lando moving forward. Gives him much more confidence in himself as well, that he knows that the hard work is paying off. And I think if he's able to keep the consistency rolling through, so the consistent weekends where you're executing on Friday, no mistakes, executing in free practice 3 on Saturday, no mistakes, executing again in qualifying to the best of your ability without mistakes, and executing on the Sunday to the best of your ability without making mistakes, then I think we are in for one heck of a second half to this Formula One World Championship. And I think this win, in particular, gave Lando Norris the confidence that he needed for the rest of this season. As for Max Verstappen, Kimi Antonelli obviously colliding into the side of Max. Antonelli did apologize to Verstappen for doing what he had done at the opening lap of this race, but it's a huge amount of points that Max Verstappen has lost here on Sunday in Austria because of this collision. So the question has to be asked, is it over for Max Verstappen in the Drivers' Championship? Now, granted, there still is just over half of a season left to go. So there's still a ton of ground to be made up. There's a lot of championship points that are still on the table for drivers to snap up. But if I was really pushed hard to answer this one, I would say it kind of feels like it's over. I mean, it's a lot of points that Max Verstappen is behind now of Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris in this Drivers' Championship standings. However, it's not impossible for Max to get back into this thing as well, but he's going to need a lot of things to go his way. First off, has to be Red Bull Racing updates, the upgrades that they bring to their car for the rest of the season. Now, the first part of this is that they did bring some updates to this car for the Austrian Grand Prix, and from the eye test, it really doesn't look like they worked out very well at all. They still need to be refined, and there still needs to be some more updates that marry with the ones they brought in Austria. So I expect there to be more coming, especially at Silverstone, and maybe for the race after as well. But Red Bull Racing has made it known that soon they will be shutting off the tap on the development of this car and focusing all their energy on the 2026 machine. So the updates that they have in the pipeline, they have to work if Max wants to have any shot of getting back into this thing. And the second part of it has to be the McLarens, and in particular, first off, Lando Norris. If Lando can take points away from Piastri, and Max is able to outscore both McLarens for most races moving forward, then yes, I would say Verstappen has a chance. But again, that's a long list of things that need to go exactly right for Max to have a chance at biting his way back in to this Drivers' Championship standings. The other part of this is Ferrari. So that's my third takeaway. And has Ferrari made a step with their race car for this weekend and for the foreseeable future? It really does look like it. They brought some new components to the floor of their car. And even though Charles Leclerc didn't get to run the race car in free practice 1, he had to give that up. But he did get to test the car in the new components in free practice 2, which he felt was a bit of a struggle. And the team doing a great job in turning the race car around for the Saturday, and him having a better feel for the new components that are on the car as well. And they still need to be exploited and refined as well. They're going to need more components to come to this thing, and I'll touch on that in just a second. But the updated floor, it really does seem to look like it's worked, and the drivers feel the same way. If we talk about the qualifying pace of the Ferrari hasn't been very good this season at all. If we take a look at where Charles Leclerc had qualified, he'd done a good job of getting the car to that point, and that, I think, rests on the shoulders of just how great Charles Leclerc is at qualifying a race car, and then where Lewis Hamilton ended up as well in Saturday qualifying. And then hearing from Lewis afterwards, and him saying he has a better feel for the car, that actually says to me, it's a very positive thing. And what Lewis has actually had to fight through this season. He was very open about what he's been dealing with on the race weekends, and I think a big part of it, he had said, is essentially arriving to the track with this car, and it feels like a totally new car with each track that he goes to, because it's different from the Mercedes and the baked-in DNA into the Mercedes that he was used to driving around all of these different tracks. So it didn't feel like a new race car whenever he went to different tracks with the Mercedes, but it does with the Ferrari because it's just different DNA. It's just a different type of a feel that he has to acknowledge and then work around. Coming into Sunday, Leclerc was feeling pretty opportunistic. He thought that podium could be possible. He thought that maybe even pushing the McLarens for a race victory could be possible as well. And then I heard from him following the race, and Charles basically explained the first stint really didn't go the way that he wanted it to. The car didn't have the pace that it had, that he thought it was going to have. And then he said the second stint and the one after, said things started to roll along a lot better and the car started to come to him more. He could put more performance into it. And he wasn't 100% certain, but he felt like they had some very strong race pace. And I think a lot of this speaks to the new floor that they had introduced for this weekend in particular. As for Lewis Hamilton, though, he was speaking afterwards, and it sounds like, he's still struggling to hold on to the balance of the car in race conditions. So as the car moves through a race, it does evolve. The track evolves, but, you lose tire, you got to go through tire degradation, and then you have to try out different types of tires as you're driving. That changes a bit of the balance of the car each time you're switching the tire, but also the fuel that's coming out of the car as you're racing it, and that also changes the balance and characteristics of the car as well. And so for Lewis, just trying to get a grasp on that and understanding that balance and how it shifts throughout a race weekend is something that he is still, in this moment, trying to figure out and trying to learn. Now, when we take a look at this development, I spoke about Red Bull and their development and how they're turning off the taps on their car and focusing more on 2026 soon. For Ferrari, they still have development in the pipeline coming to this car. So there is more parts that are going to be coming to the Ferrari. They're not too sure whether or not they're going to introduce something new at Silverstone, or if they're just going to wait another race and maybe introduce it a little bit later, maybe at Spa or maybe the Hungaroring before the summer break, to kind of see where their car shakes out from this particular update that they brought, because they're going to need to introduce a few more things that complement a new floor of a race car. And so I'm actually really excited to see where Ferrari can actually go from here. Like, it looks possible to me to see them start pushing McLaren a little bit more and being more aggressive with McLaren as we get deeper into this season. Charles Leclerc seems to believe that as well, if the components that are new that come to the car actually work out in the way they want them to. We've got another race coming up next weekend. It's the British Grand Prix. I'll be there, boots on the ground, and so we'll give you more from that race weekend next Sunday.